I remember when I went to Anambra, so many years back when this man was governor, Chris Ngige. I was surprised to find that in Anambra government house, they had basketball court. So I went to Chris Ngige. I said, Excellency, there's basketball court. He said, yes, I'm a medical doctor. It's a very good sport. I said, yes. For who? He said, Ali Baba, I can see your folly. You are a very stupid boy. I said, okay, sir. Well, I know I'm stupid, but if I learn, I can get wise. But, sir, how can you prove this height? It just shows that when he was growing up, he did not read his Bible, because the Bible says, read your Bible. Read your Bible. If you want. I'm sure Aki Papa just read Genesis.
Comedy in its raw form and in different forms has been in existence long before now. You remember court jesters back in the days to kings. You remember the stories of the tortoise and the rabbit, the tortoise and the lion and all of that. So storytellers have employed comedy in different ways. What happened was that the form that it took on as stand-up comedy started from the days of like John Chukwu, but did not take form. It started because John Chukwu was an MC who did comedy, but not stand-up comedy per se. And so when myself and some young guys came on, we decided that it was time to take stand-up comedy to a different level as it was done overseas. And it was easy for it to grow because people needed laughter. It was a period of the military rule. There was so much oppression. People needed things to take their minds over. We needed to laugh at ourselves. And when it came on, there was some little resistance here or there because people did not see it as a norm. But as soon as the effect of comedy started dawning on people and people started seeing the value it adds to events, to their lives, and to conversations, because you're somewhere and you're talking and then you remember this and it just brings a smile to your face. It made people feel good about themselves, and it was now easy for people to laugh about certain things that they usually did not laugh about. At first you found people who went, oh, he's always talking about the Igbos, he's always talking about the Yorubas, he's always talking about, and so we gave it a break. We were like, okay, let's stop talking about the Igbos, let's stop talking about the Yorubas, let's stop talking about the Hausas. And so we started talking about the Warri people. After a while, it now became, why is it always Warri people? So we gave it a break and started talking about Ajebotas and Ajepakos. People who followed the trends of comedy would remember that after a while, we were talking about the least and less educated children and compared them to the children of the rich. After a while, it was now a case of talking about the hardened people on the streets, the streetwise guys, and the complete affluently brought up children. Then after a while, it now became a case of, oh, what is it? And then we started talking about men and women. So it was a gradual phase. As we moved from one point to the other, people got comfortable. We moved to another point, people got comfortable. After a while, we left the tribal jokes. And then we started picking on government. So at that time that we picked on government, democracy had come. So it was easy for that. But the greatest platform that gave comedy, stand-up comedy, the biggest rise and the biggest influence ever was Obasanjo's regime in Nigeria, because it came with democracy. Democracy came with freedom of speech, and people have this understanding that if Obasanjo, who was the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the commander of the armed forces, found the things that we said funny and did not think that they were offensive, then it must mean that two things. Either he has a great sense of humor or there's nothing to worry about. And as soon as he accepted us, in the person of myself and all the other comedians that used to go entertain at the villa, every other person warmed up to it.
You know boxing? Boxing is one sport that proves that the Bible is correct. That it is better to give than to receive. Apparently, Samuel Peters didn't read it. Samuel Peters went to fight that Klitschko man. What they did to him was what they did to Rashidi Yakini and Joe Lasisi. Joe Lasisi was fighting in the ring. This Ghanaian boy was beating him. The coach was there. Lasisi, lower and upper. The guy gave him one bar. He landed on the ground. They counted. He was telling him, Lasisi, get up. Whoa, go to the 10. I did it. Before he gets to 10, I will get up. Don't be disturbing me. The man said 8. Lasisi got up. The guy was coming. Lasisi was running for a while. Run. The coach said, Lasisi, go for him. He said, Ofe Woleni, you want to enter for me? After the beating had continued for a while and they rang the bell, Lasisi went, sat down. Coach said, I can see your face is bloody. He said, me, I can't see you. That was the same thing that happened to Samuel Peters. Did you people see the picture? Samuel Peters' lip went to the ear. His nose opened. I saw his kidneys. When they finished that fight, Samuel Peters was so embarrassed that he couldn't go back to America. He said he wanted to come because Akpabio said he should come and recover. He went to the airport. They said, sir, you can't travel. He said, why? He said, this is not you. He said, that is me, Samuel Peters. He said, we know Samuel Peters. This is not Samuel Peters.
I did not think that it was going to be this big, but the indicators were there. Because what are the indicators of something that will grow? It is how acceptable it was, what value it was bringing to the table, the people who needed the service, and then the platforms on which it could be expressed. All of these were there, but they were not in the scale at which we have it now. I'll give you two examples. One was that we hardly give respect to comedians. And my parents showed that. My dad did not want me to become a comedian. But as soon as it became clear that the comedian could be financially capable and responsible, it watered down the anger and the resistance that my father, broke down the resistance that my father and every other person had for their children. It now became a case of, okay, you can be an engineer like Oke Bakassi, you can be a theater graduate like Basoj, Taria Jr., and or Yibo Koko. You could be a linguistic graduate like Benga Denyinka. You could be an insurance graduate like Teju Babyface. You could be a lawyer like Lepashos. You could be an accountant, an engineer. And gradually, the respect that people had for it started to grow, which is why I talked about the appreciation. So for my dad at that time, it was a case of you can't become a comedian. You can't become a comedian. To do what? But we gradually started turning the tables when people saw that these guys were making money. In fact, the thing is that the guys were making money were the first one. They're making good money. And we broke the resistance when some of them were like, how can we pay you 20,000 naira to just come and stand up and talk for like 10, 20 minutes? When the whole band will play for the whole day and we are paying them just 10,000. No. But as soon as it began to dawn on them that the value proposition that we're bringing on the table was different, it was easy for it to be accepted. In the university community, if your allowance was like 150, 130, which was what I used to get, 5 naira for 10, 20 minutes was good. And so if you had 5 naira here, 10 naira there, 5 naira here, 10 naira there, in about like 4 or 5 places in a month, then you're a big boy. So what happened was that the financial dynamics and the proposition was okay. And it looked like if this thing grows, I probably would just abandon waiting for my dad to send me something every month. And that was what happened. And so it was a lot of money because that was a start. But gradually it became 10 naira, became 20 naira per show, and became 30 naira. And Guinness came to do one show in Ekpoma, and I was paid 50 naira.
Big money.
It was awesome. It was half of what I wait for every month. And I just got it at a show. And before you could say Jack Robinson, I was earning about like 150 naira per show. At the time I left school in 1989, I was already at 700, 600 naira per show. And I could get about like 2 or 3. And there were people who were still depending on monthly allowances of 100 to 120 naira monthly. And there were some people who were earning it as a salary. I could earn this money that I was waiting for in a month at once. That was undisputable. And the second one was that it meant that people valued this thing more than I even did. The second one. The third one was that there was fame and recognition tied to the job. The third was that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was like effortless. There were no, when people are saying, they said, oh, consumables, you have to overhead and all of that. There was nothing. All you just need to do was have your head screwed on tight, read as much as you could, and regurgitate. And just pour everything out. And it was down my street. Down my street in the sense that I had grown to love books. I'd grown to read everything. At age 13, 14, I had the Encyclopedia Britannica that I took from the library, in my dad's library. And I was going through it. I was fascinated by words. I was fascinated by the meaning of the words and how I could make fun of some of the words. Then I started reading the Nigerian Reader's Digest very early. A lot of people would not remember that Nigeria had a Reader's Digest at the time. And gradually from the Nigerian Reader's Digest, I graduated to the Foreign Reader's Digest, collections of which I still have. I started collecting Reader's Digest from 1972, 73. And even when I now grew to find where I could get old copies, I went as far back as 1954. Now, all of them are Reader's Digest, the National Geographic, are all flowing with stories from different parts of the world. All you needed to do was milk out the humor in it and tell them. So with the fact that all of these materials were coming to me, all I needed to do was synchronize them and put them as appropriate. It was a matter of application. What needed those jokes to flow? And understanding a people was down my street too, since I read religious studies and philosophy. And philosophy also gave me a bigger understanding of what the whole world was about. I did philosophy of law, I did philosophy of religion, I did philosophy of sociology, I did philosophy of politics, I did philosophy of marketing, of business, and of languages. And all of those courses kept opening you up to how people think, how people thought, and where people were coming from anytime they made certain political statements and all of that. And you just continue to understand it better. Then religion. I read religious studies and philosophy. Religious studies had to do with Arabic, Greek, Hebrew, the Hindus, the Hindi, and their religions, that's the Eastern religions, and African traditional religion. The stories and the things that you read about them were just easy materials for you to pick, to create jokes. That said, when you put all of this together, you come up with a cocktail of materials that you never run out of, and which meant that you could also doctor the things that you wanted to say and tailor it to meet the people that you were entertaining. So it was easy. So in the beginning, I was like a comedian on drugs, because I did not expect that of the comedy, and so it just kept coming. And being, by the way, there was another factor. It was the fact that I wanted to prove to my parents that this was the right thing to do. That factor kept ringing in my head that if you fail, it will be that we told you to read law. We always told you to read law. We knew this would happen. And so I was on a journey of I must not fail and I must prove every other person wrong. That then there was a bigger picture of how comedians were living in the Western world.
Oh, you knew how they were.
Oh yes, because I was reading about them. I read the book of American History of Comedy, and I found out that stand-up comedy started way back in America because of the slaves who came with stories from Africa. And every time they wanted them to come tell stories, they remove your padlock and allow you to stand up and deliver. So the farmers, the black farmers who had stories to tell, like the ones who come from those families that had stories of orators and all of them, had a fair chance to continue to regale the masters with stories of the broken English and the patched word, and just make sure that they had some freedom. So it is that comedy bought them some freedom. And as well as you did it, your padlock was not on till the next day. So the padlock was off because you did stand up. And so what it meant was that all of them that had the ability to tell this one started warming up to the masters, which was in the movie like that has Samuel L. Jackson about slave trade, that had Forrest Whitaker. You find that those people who could speak English and managed to communicate with the masters got some benefits. And the benefits included not being locked, padlocks not being put in your mouth, and the ability that you could right now made you some lord over some people. And that freedom grew as funny as you get.
You know Messi? Messi will dribble up to a point. Some of you don't watch the referee's reaction. Messi dribbled up to a point. 5 people here dribble. It was the referee that was saying, pass now. Because that Messi, he doesn't play normal. Did you see when they played against Arsenal, after like 4-5 this year, Arsene Wenger stood up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5. Then he got to Messi. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Coach, Messi. Because some guys should not just be allowed. By the way, talking of sports, how many of you here like cricket? Cricket, if you like cricket. I like cricket. I like football. I like cricket. But I like cricket especially when it's roasted. If you roast them. And you know, several things mean several things to different people. You know, you people call this thing football. I asked Okocha the other day, I said, Okocha, what be this? He said, ATM machine.
If we were a software, we'll be loading at about like 30-40% right now. Oh, yes, we'll be loading at about 30-40%. But the people outside will think that we're nearly there. Some of them will think that, oh, we've loaded up to about like 90. No, we've not. Because the application and platforms that we use to express our humor right now is still limited to wedding receptions, a concert that a comedian organizes. And if you really do look at it, you will notice that comedians are the ones that actually organize concerts the more. Musicians don't. Musicians wait till a comedian organizes a concert and then they come the feature on the show. The trend has been that comedians are the ones that create those platforms to bring the musicians to perform. And so we're growing. Now you begin to find comedians are now also used as brand ambassadors for some products. So we're growing. You find that comedians are pulling their weight when it comes to. Before now, when you talk about entertainment, you say movies, music, movies, screen, and that's about it. But now, by the time you're done with music, movies, comedy begins to jump in there. So we're like about the third or fourth estate in the entertainment circle, because we, as comedians right now, we are more popular than dancers, which was not true before. We're now more popular than theater actors. And most of the theater actors have now branched into movies, Nollywood. And now you even find some comedians are taking part in the movies. You also find that comedians are making their foray into Western world, into Africa, and we even do shows in Canada, in France, in Germany, because we've grown to that point. Stand-up comedy is still growing. I say we're a small crawling industry, but the impact and the effects and the achievements that we've garnered over the years outweigh the way we are growing. So there's so much noise about how much we have grown than what we are really doing. Because right now, comedians still earn between, an entry-level comedian still earns between 50 and 100K. After about like 2 years, he steps up to the 500 and 800 category. And after about like another 4 years, he gets into the 1 million mark. And then give them another 10 years, because those who have done 10 to 15 years in the business can command the 1.5, 2 million naira. And people like us can collect a little more, you know? Because at that point, it gets to the value proposition that you're bringing on the table. It's Alibaba, it's OK Bakassi, it's Basket Mouth, it's Bovi, it's TA, you know, that is coming to the table. It's Basoj that is going to be the MC. So you bring a certain influence into the place. Don't forget that we also have an advantage over the upcoming comedians, because the client might also feel you are the one that can relate with the level of people that are coming to this place. We're having elder statesmen. We do not want a young man who will not understand the dynamics, because there's a very thin line between being funny and being offensive. And so you tread it carefully. But with experience, you can walk that path like it's second nature. It is where people get to know the impact and essence of stand-up comedy, the importance of stand-up comedians in the whole scheme of things. Being funny is serious business. You do not get a sense of humor. It's not by chance that people say you can marry the best husband, but let him have a sense of humor. A sense of humor is important in every man, because you cannot go through life with such tough take on life. You have to have a sense of humor that makes you laugh at certain things, because the best thing people say is, if you are able to laugh at yourself, then you are a greater human being. Now, if you go to an event, a comedian and a musician are performing. The musician can play We Are the World, play Endless Love at the beginning of the event. As the event is going on, he can come back and play Endless Love again. He can play We Are the World again. But you cannot tell a joke at the beginning of the event and tell it again at the same event. All right? Why is that? It's because you are relating to the mental abilities of people. You are not singing to their emotions. You're relating to their mental abilities. Before anybody can laugh at anything, you know, it means that the person has to follow your chain of thought. And in following that process, it becomes cerebral. It's just that it ends up becoming funny. But it has to be cerebral. It's not something, oh, beautiful. Because the thing is, somebody can perform a song like several times or perform on stage, and he sings, and when he's done, he leaves. And people go, I think that guy was okay, but I think he should have done better. But it was okay. But it was a good party all the same. It's different from a comedian. A comedian's judgment is immediate. He's not funny, he's not funny. It's not like, oh, but I think he was okay. No. You either hit it or you're dead. Which is why they say a lot of comedians die on stage. Which is why you should have killer jokes that are like your backup plan. So when you're telling a joke and it falls flat, you back it up with a very stronger joke. You back it up with a stronger joke so that nobody knows that there was something that fell flat there. That said, the repetition of jokes, it's bound to happen in an industry that is growing, which is why I told you that if we're growing, we're about like 30, 40%. And why does that happen? It happens because in an industry where people have started seeing that the guys that are the forerunners and frontliners are making it. They're buying cars, they're building houses, they're flying first class, they're living well, their lifestyle is in the class of very affluent people, their networking is super, they relate with the high and mighty, their future is kind of guaranteed. They step up and people recognize them. Fame is like their portion. Definitely, you begin to have quacks who jump into it, not because they have all the necessary ingredients to fly, but because they want to live like you, which is like pirated products and the original products. The original products are there, but the fake products would like to look like the original products. That said, so it means that a lot of the young comedians or people who jump into the career that are not thorough comedians or true-born comedians or thoroughbred come into it and begin to grapple and scratch at any kind of jokes that they have because they can't create any. And what happens is that after a while, they are stifled. They don't have any new jokes. So they keep depending on these old ones until new ones come into the fountain. And the fountain of comedy is the type that the senior comedians and the very creative ones keep throwing jokes out in the pool. And those ones will come there and fetch, take them to survive. I have no problem with a comedian who takes jokes to survive, because even on American Idols and reality shows, musical reality shows, people come on the stage to perform songs of Whitney Houston, of Mariah Carey, of R. Kelly, and the greats, Michael Jackson and all of them, just to prove that they can do this thing. So you judge them on those parameters and yardsticks. Why do you judge them? You judge them on that because you can look at what the greats have done and say, he delivered it well. He has a stage ambience, presence. He's been able to handle the jokes well, so I think it's okay, right? So the young comedians too need all those jokes to grow. But what is happening is that because people can't afford the big comedians all the time, so they take the younger ones and do a lot more events. So the younger ones do a lot more events. And it's expected that since they're doing a lot more events and they're not creating as many jokes as they should, then there's bound to be repetition. I'll give you another example. A band that's playing at a wedding reception can still come there and play, hey, hey, I feel all right. One time, pam, pam. He plays it at the first wedding, he plays it at TBS, he plays it at Muson, he plays it at a co-hotel. Nobody sees a problem. But if it's a comedian, they're like, oh no, it shouldn't. It's just like when you find, I read a lot of columns. After a while, you discover that the way some columnists introduce some paragraphs becomes routine. They might change the words here, but there's certain phrases that keep jumping into their columns. Nobody says, why does he keep repeating this phrase? Because it's not mainstream. But I tell you, comedy has gotten to a place where we are right under the magnifying glass now. So everything we say, do, and it's sad that comedians have now become commentators, social commentators. It's expected, it was expected, that because then your court jester might say something that the king looks at and says, oh, I think there's something there. So same thing applies now. The comedian becomes a social commentator. He tells a story. I'll give you an example. I did a story one time about how stingy Mr. President was. That President Obasanjo. And that he was so stingy that they told him they were building an effigy, erecting an effigy in his honor. And he asked how much it was. And they told him it was going to cost 50 million. And he said, 50 million for an effigy of me? He said, yes. He said, bring the money, I'll go and stand there. In that case, he was the butt of the joke. But the story that we want you to get is that he's very stingy. But on the other side, some will see it as just being stingy. But then again, it shows that he's prudent.
It's true.
It's true. So, to Baba, all the case of when the case of the National Assembly at the time that had a big Ghana must go, that said there was 2 billion naira that was sent to the National Assembly to influence some this thing. And Baba was watching it on TV. And Baba said, they said I sent them 2 billion in those bags. Tell them to return it. I'm not giving it to them again. It became clear that it was a ruse. That he did not send anything like, because Baba would take, Baba will give you 2 billion to influence something. He would rather threaten you. You understand? So those are the things. So you take a story. Okay, I'll give you another example. When a bike rider runs to a police station to report that his bike has been stolen, and the policeman told him to go to Blazes, and he was crying, and the man there said, but you should attend to him. He said, attend to him. Why? A whole ship, empty African Pride, was missing. We have not found it in the past 3 weeks. You are looking for a bike? You know? And you still talk about, for instance, I also have a story of a robbery operation that was taking place. And armed robbers were going from car to car and robbing everybody blind. And they got to this car. They opened the car and saw a former governor in the car. And they told him to drive off. And the boss said, why did you let him go? He said, spirit the call. You know? So, you know, you have those kind of stories. But then it takes a proper understanding of the politics to say those. To appreciate those jokes. Now, which brings me to the point that I was coming to, that people have finally, or sadly, reversed roles. Politicians are now taken as jokes, and comedians are taken seriously. We shouldn't be. The comedian should be taken not seriously, should not be taken seriously, and the politician should be taken seriously. Now a politician says, don't mind him, he's a man of unclean mind. And people go, it's just been funny. Then the comedian says, I think that politician is a man of unclean mind. And they say they sent him. Somebody must have sent him. He couldn't have said that on his own. It's a political statement.
If a rich man drives his car to a point and parks, he comes out anywhere, takes his remote, chow chow, chow chow chow. All the doors that were not even locked, wind up, lock, bounce. That's it. Watch poor man. They will park. Only God knows where they get that thing they used to lock steering. Then they get one blacksmith to make the one they used to lock pedal. They open the bonnet and disconnect the carburetor. And then come back and close the door. And they don't even just close the door. When they close the door, you hear, the door will go, bukum. After they go, one. Who has doors that you lock like house door? 1, 2, 3. When you see a rich man signing a check, like Dangote, I'm mentioning these people because those are people who have given me something before. You just say, Ali, well done, take. He has signed. Odili, he has signed. My uncle wanted to sign a check for me. This is the check. This is how he's supposed to sign. He turned the check upside down, signed the first half.
Challenges are so much. One of the challenges is that you have the case of people complaining about repetitive jokes, repeated jokes. You also have the case of the market not being well organized or structured enough for a comedian to benefit from jokes that he has created. And what it means is that you create a joke, and every other person takes it, latches onto it, and keeps making money from it, and you that created the joke, you do not have a way of getting rights paid to you. So then you also have a case of you can't now shoot a show and put it on the streets to sell, because pirates will jump on it and the hawks will pirate it and sell on the streets.
Some comedians do that. You still see CDs.
But they don't make it because even to organize a show, it takes, for instance, I'll give you a simple example. Bobby's show, Basket Mouse show, AY's show, there's none of them that is organized with less than 100 million naira. But then when you now tell somebody to pay to come watch the show, they'll be wondering, why are you charging 10,000 naira or 20,000 naira or selling a table for 1 million? Yet you're going to get musicians to come perform on the platform.
You pay them.
You're going to advertise the show. The venues that will take as many people as for you to recover your show should be a venue like a 2,000 seating capacity, 1,500 seating capacity, and you're talking about 10 million naira for the hall. You've not talked about advertising. You've not talked about decoration of the hall. You've not talked of building the stage. You've not talked about tickets. And a lot of other stuff like that. Security, ushers, bouncers, and all of this, and then providing accommodation for people who will come in to take part in your show. So by the time you put all of these dynamics together, the show is climbing into 100 and something million. If you don't have sponsors, which hardly comes, you'll be high and dry while you're pursuing the show. Then again, you have cases of people who do not want to pay for services, and the job is not tangible. It's not like you supply the generator and the guy is not paying, then you go back and pick your generator. You MC the show or become the comedian at the show. When you are done and you're telling him, oh, you're still owing me some outstanding, at that time it dawns on them that, what is it that we're even paying this much for? All right, but the service is done. The other thing is the challenge of people thinking that comedians should be taken for a ride. Some people don't think that you should be paid your worth. Yet, the markets that you go to, nobody is going to say, oh, because these are children of Basket Mouth and Alibaba, your school fees is half. The school fees of your children will still be the school fees that other children are paying. So we have those challenges. Another challenge is that the platforms are not growing as much and people are not accepting us, because if anybody has a comedy show now, you want to, instead of being paid to present the comedy show on a channel, the channel wants you to pay to put the comedy show on the channel. Meanwhile, the television station needs content. And so you're paying to put your show on the platform, and they are getting the benefits of having it as a content. So it's really crazy. But it happens. Back in the days, I'd like to mention this. I had a show called Tom, Dick, and Ali. It was a game show. People called in, it was live. It was on AIT. Doc Kwesi was paying me to present the show. He was paying me, AIT was paying me to present the show. Which was why I did not do anything. So people were telling me, how can you lock down Saturday and Sundays from 5 to 6 p.m. on a channel? Don't you work at that time? I said, no, that the guy pays me enough to have the show on this. And so, which is why the show was rich. And then they now had issues at that time, and we took the show off air and tried to bring it on another thing. But when we now tried to take it to other station, they wanted me to pay. It's a big burden. So that's a big challenge for comedians. The other thing with comedians is that you get to a point where you need to explore other places and other areas and take your talent to other platforms, like break into movies, like Jamie Foxx has been there and he's done that, music, movies, and comedy. And he dances good as well. You have people like that, and in the Western world, they grow faster because they just are concerned with the delivery and being talented. delivery and creativity. But a lot of them have joke writers. The comedy writers actually write the jokes so they'll say, oh, I love this joke. Oh, no, I don't like this joke. You drop that. No, I think this joke is better than. So they have but here you work for yourself. And so those are some catalysts for change that we're looking forward to, which is why when I tell people that our industry is just growing, they still wonder, oh no, with what you people have achieved. No, we still have a long way to go. You actually need a platform for all the departments and for all the areas of stand-up comedy to properly blossom. And one of it is cable TV. The second is terrestrial TV. It also works because I believe that the reason stand-up comedy is growing in South Africa, East Africa, is because they have language. The Swahili language, the Afrikaans and all that. It's a language that they speak generally in that place. So you kind of like have a little form.
Different ball in West Africa.
Exactly. In West Africa now you have English and French. So you really can't cut across in all areas, which is why the Nigerians relate better with Ghanaians and the Cameroonians relate better with the Republic of Benin. And also, so the dichotomy and the French facade, the language facade that has been created separates us a bit. But in the East African and South African area, they have a common ground. So if a comedian is performing in Kenya and steps to South Africa, as he's performing and he breaks into Swahili, people connect with him. And if you notice, because of the longer stay of the whites in South Africa, the structure that helps comedy grow is already in place. And right there, the whites appreciate stand-up comedy more. And but here, the appreciation still needs to be stepped up a little more. And so in the whole of Africa, it's beginning to grow, but it grows faster in South Africa. It's growing well. In South Africa, if we're still looking at the scale of software, South Africa should be about like 70, and Nigeria will still catch up.